You may have heard that narcissists are repelled by certain types of people, and this is very true. From the moment you meet a narcissist, even well before you even have any idea that you've met a narcissist, they are testing you. And what they're really doing is they're testing your boundaries, and they might be asking some very key questions to get a feel for whether you would be a good target or not. And there are 5 ways, at least 5 ways, a narcissist will test their potential targets when they first meet them. And that's what we're going to cover in this video, so stay tuned. Welcome to the Common Ego community. My name is Christina, and on this channel we explore emotional abuse, its connection with spirituality, and we attempt to answer the question, where do we go from here? So if that all sounds good to you, be sure you're subscribed, and if you're already subscribed, thank you and welcome back. So today we're talking about the tests that a narcissist may give you when they first meet you to decide whether you're going to be a good target for them or not. And these might be things that you've encountered, things that you can look at in hindsight and say, yeah, I was that kind of person. I know that I've encountered at least one of these tests. So what the narcissist is going to be testing for is to see if they're going to be able to trample your boundaries. So let's jump into the 5 ways that a narcissist might test you. Now, these are in no particular order, but we're going to start with empathy, because I know that a lot of you out there relate as empaths, and you are highly empathetic people. And unfortunately, most of you out there have encountered at least one narcissist in your life. So the narcissist-empath relationship is an interesting one. The narcissist, we know, doesn't have emotional empathy, but yet they look for someone who does have a lot of emotional empathy. Not just regular, not just normal emotional empathy, but a lot of it. So this person might be an empath or might just be highly empathetic. This person cares for other people. The person who's highly empathetic is very likely to be a people pleaser or a fixer. Somebody who sees someone else's problems and just naturally wants to help. And oftentimes, if a highly empathetic person does not have solid boundaries, they are very likely to be putting the other person's needs and feelings above their own. So how do narcissists test for empathy? Well, they might tell you a sad story from their childhood, or they might ask you questions about situations that you've been in. They might pry a little bit too much into personal things that maybe make you a little bit emotional. Again, it's really interesting because narcissists lack emotional empathy, yet they are looking for it in you. So you might wonder, how would they even know when they saw it? And this is a little bit tricky because these people have spent their lives mimicking empathy, and they have cognitive empathy. They study empathy, essentially. So they know when this happens, you're supposed to feel this way. And when this happens, you're supposed to feel that way. They get this from watching other people as they're growing up and from watching movies. Narcissists are always working on their fake empathy skills. So they do know empathy when they see it. And I think in a lot of cases, they can tell whether it's genuine or not, because they're coming from a place where they're faking it. So they might be able to see someone else faking it. But either way, this is going to be something that they're testing you for. They're going to want to see that you have a good deal of empathy, and they're going to want to see that it's sincere. So the next thing the narcissist is going to test is your vulnerability. And by this, I mean how likely you are or might be or might seem to rely on the narcissist. And this is an awful, awful trap, because you know once you do start relying on the narcissist, that's when the love bombing phase goes out the window. That's when you lose all love bombing and the devaluation phase starts, because they're repelled by that. They don't actually want you to depend on them, but they do look for that in a target because they know that you're going to be likely to stay. So how does a narcissist test for vulnerability? They're going to look at your relationships with your close friends and family members. Do you talk to your family every day? Do you have friends that you hang out with regularly? If you don't, you might be a good target for a narcissist. So if you just move cross country or around the world and you don't know anybody, you're in a new place, you're a very, very good target for a narcissist. And this isn't to scare you. When you decide that you're emotionally healthy and ready for a new relationship, especially after all you've been through, you're very likely to naturally repel a narcissist. So back to the issue of this vulnerability. The narcissist is going to ask you questions about your life. And it sounds creepy when we're talking about it now. It sounds like, they're going to ask you whether you're alone. Do you have anybody that cares about you? But the thing is that these things kind of come up naturally in conversation. People talk about the people in their lives and their relationships with them. So you may not be able to detect if somebody is asking questions to find out your vulnerabilities, but you can detect if they seem a little bit too interested in the fact that you're separated from your family, or maybe you just had a falling out with your best friends. If they seem really interested in that stuff, then that is a red flag. So another way you can be vulnerable to a narcissist, if you're just flat out emotionally vulnerable. You just went through a really bad breakup or a divorce, or you're grieving a loss. If any of these things describe your situation, or if you're feeling especially emotionally vulnerable and you're looking for a relationship to distract you from that, you are going to be very attractive to a narcissist. Now, this is a relatively easy one to avoid, because when you can identify that you are in an emotionally vulnerable state, it's probably not a good idea to start dating. So you may want to build up your friend group and be on the lookout for narcissistic friends, but it's probably not a good idea to let somebody that close into your inner circle until you're feeling a little bit less vulnerable. So the third thing that narcissists are going to test for is your history of abuse. A narcissist is very likely to ask you questions about your past relationships, about your childhood, and these are kind of normal questions that you might ask somebody when you're getting to know them. But what the narcissist is looking for when they're testing their new targets is signs of abuse. If you've been down that road, or maybe if that's all you've known, you might think that some abusive things are normal, and you might be very likely to put up with the narcissist's nonsense. So when you meet a new person, this one, again, it's going to be a little bit tough to detect. Not everyone is a narcissist, and not everyone who asks about your childhood is a narcissist. But if somebody, again, seems very interested in the details of, all that nitty-gritty stuff, if they're pushing maybe too hard too fast and asking questions that you're not super comfortable answering yet, or if they seem just a little bit too interested in the abuse side of it, these are going to be red flags that you want to look out for when you meet a new person. So the fourth way a narcissist will test you is to see how likely you are to take the blame for things. And this can happen in just little ways here and there. If you're willing to take the blame for being late when it was really their fault, or something really minor, and if you notice that they let you take the blame, that could be a red flag. The narcissist may also test whether you're going to be a good scapegoat for them by asking about your past relationships. So, do you take all the blame or most of the blame for everything that went wrong? This is a little bit of a tricky one, because we do really need to take responsibility for all the things that we have done wrong in our lives. So we're not narcissists, but we're not perfect either. So it's really important to take responsibility for your own actions and your own faults. We all have them. But if you're talking about maybe an abusive relationship and you're saying, well, she was physically abusive to me, but I wasn't perfect either. I did this and I did that. Or if it was an emotionally abusive relationship, well, he was emotionally abusive to me, but I, whatever, fill in the blanks. If you're excusing things that are really not excusable, you're going to be a great target for a narcissist. So how do we counter this? Your past is your past, right? Maybe you'll avoid trying to say certain things, but how are we really going to fail this narcissist's test? And the answer is to build up your own emotional health and well-being. To build yourself up to the point where you know what's yours and what's not. You know what you should take responsibility for and what you shouldn't. And at this point, you also know a lot about narcissism. So you know that when somebody is allowing you to take responsibility for something that really should be theirs, you know it's probably a sign you should walk away. So the last test that a narcissist will give you is actually the same test that anyone you meet will give you. But I wanted to point this one out because it's very important and it's very true. What the narcissist is looking for is somebody who's smart, funny, charismatic, somebody who is conscientious and earns a lot. They're looking for good qualities. And the target may not have all of those. They may just have one or two. But they're looking for qualities, usually qualities that they don't have. So especially if you're dealing with a covert narcissist, they like to feel special by association. So in the beginning, in the idealization phase, they chose you because you have all these great features. And they mirrored those features back to you, as many as they could. And the reason why they did this is because it made them feel special to be with you. They felt special by association with you. But remember that a narcissist, at their core, they're all about themselves. And so when they realize that all of those good things that you have are yours and yours alone, and they're not going to rub off on the narcissist, that's when they're going to start devaluing you. So this one, there's not so much you can do about. You just have to get out there and just keep being your awesome self. But just make sure that you're emotionally healthy enough so that when you meet a narcissist, you will fail all the other 4 tests. You're going to keep passing number 5. But when you're in a really good place, you're going to fail 1 through 4. Because whether you're dealing with a narcissistic friend or a narcissistic partner, potential partner, you're going to have boundaries that are going to repel this person. So those are the 5 ways a narcissist will test you. And if you can think of any more, or if you have any experience with any of this kind of testing in your own relationships that you've had with narcissists, let us know in the comments. And if you like this video, please let me know by hitting the like button. And if you'd like to see more like it, be sure you're subscribed, and I will see you next time.